First contact gone wrong. Dr. Elena Martinez stood frozen before the holographic display at Europa Research Station, her coffee mug suspended halfway to her lips. The quantum detection array had picked up something impossible. A massive energy signature beyond the Kuiper belt, moving at speeds that defied human physics. "Run the calculations again," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The station's AI complied silently, but the results remained unchanged. 12 objects, each larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, were decelerating toward the solar system. Within hours, every major space agency and military installation in the solar system had received Elena's data. The object's trajectory left no doubt. They were headed directly for Earth. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization was about to begin, whether they were ready or not. Admiral David Okonjo sat in the cramped command center of the Lunar Defense Station, surrounded by the best military minds Earth had to offer. The holographic projections showed the alien vessel's approach vectors, their energy signatures pulsing like heartbeats in the void. "They haven't responded to any of our transmission attempts," Communications Officer John reported, frustration evident in her voice. "We've tried every frequency, every known mathematical sequence. Nothing." The Admiral nodded slowly, his dark eyes fixed on the display. Humanity had prepared for this moment for decades, building up their defenses, establishing colonies on Mars and Europa, developing technologies that would have seemed like science fiction just a generation ago. But facing the reality of those massive ships, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were children playing at war games. The first response from the aliens came 3 days later. A transmission broadcast simultaneously to every communications device in the solar system. The holographic image showed a being that appeared almost crystalline, with fractal patterns shifting across its translucent surface. "We are the collective," it announced in perfect English, its voice resonating with harmonic overtones. "We have observed your species for some time. Your development has been noteworthy." Admiral Okonjo stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Council, his uniform crisp despite having not slept in days. "They're scanning everything," he reported. "Our ships, our stations, our defense systems. They're not even trying to hide it." The council chamber erupted in worried murmurs. The collective ships had positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the solar system, their presence a constant reminder of their technological superiority. "They claim to come in peace," Council President Aisha Rahman said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Their technological advances could benefit humanity immensely." "With all due respect, Madam President," Elena interrupted from her position at the advisory podium, "their actions don't match their words. They're conducting military reconnaissance while feeding us platitudes about peaceful exchange." The debate might have continued, but at that moment, every screen in the chamber lit up with another transmission from the collective. The crystalline being appeared again, but this time its harmonic voice held an edge of disdain. "We have completed our assessment," it announced. "Your species' technological development is insufficient for meaningful exchange. Your attempts at military defense are primitive. For the safety and stability of this sector, we will assume control of your system. Resist, and we will be forced to take more dramatic action." The chamber exploded into chaos, but Elena barely noticed. Her mind was racing, connecting dots that had been nagging at her since the first scans. The collective's technology was advanced, yes, but it was also predictable. Their ships moved with perfect efficiency. Their responses came with perfect timing. Too perfect. She grabbed Admiral Okonjo's arm as he strode past her position. "Sir, I need 5 minutes of your time. I think I've figured out their weakness." The Admiral paused, studying her face. In the background, the collective's ultimatum continued to play, but Elena could see the moment when curiosity won out over protocol in Okonjo's eyes. "The way they scan our systems," she explained quickly, "it's comprehensive but rigid. They're looking for specific types of technology, specific patterns of development. Their own ships move like they're following predetermined optimal paths. What if their entire civilization is based on perfect optimization? What if they've become so advanced that they've lost the ability to adapt to the unexpected? Okonjo's eyes widened slightly. Go on. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. Elena continued, her words tumbling out faster. It's our ability to improvise, to do the irrational thing when the rational approach fails. A slow smile spread across the Admiral's face. And you have a plan? Helena nodded, pulling up schematics on her tablet. We've been working on something at Europa Station, something that doesn't follow any conventional rules of spacecraft design. We called it Project Chaos. The collective had given humanity 12 hours to surrender. They didn't realize they had just made their first mistake. They had given humanity time to think, time to plan, time to do what humans did best: adapt and overcome. As Elena hurried through the council chamber's corridors with Admiral Okonjo, she couldn't help but smile. The collective thought they were dealing with a primitive species. They were about to learn that sometimes being primitive meant being unpredictable. And unpredictability was about to become humanity's greatest weapon. Project Chaos. The journey to Europa Station felt like the longest 6 hours of Admiral Okonjo's life. As their transport ship approached the research facility embedded in the icy moon's surface, Elena pulled up detailed schematics of Project Chaos on the cabin's holographic display. Traditional spacecraft design focuses on efficiency and predictability, she explained, manipulating the complex 3D model with practiced gestures. We went the opposite direction. Project Chaos deliberately incorporates controlled instability into every system. The hologram showed a ship unlike anything Okonjo had ever seen. Instead of the sleek, symmetrical designs favored by both human and collective engineers, Project Chaos looked almost organic. Its hull was comprised of overlapping plates that could shift and reconfigure themselves, while multiple smaller craft were integrated into its structure like cells in a living organism. The power core uses controlled quantum fluctuations, Elena continued, highlighting a pulsing sphere at the ship's center. It's intentionally unstable, but that instability gives us access to energy states that conventional physics says should be impossible. The collective sensors won't be able to predict our power output because it genuinely follows no pattern. Okonjo studied the design with growing interest. And you can control this instability. That's where the human element becomes crucial, Elena said, bringing up another display showing the neural interface system. The ship requires a crew that can think intuitively, react to chaos rather than try to impose order. We've been training a team for months, but we never expected to deploy so soon. The transport ship docked with Europa Station, and Elena led the Admiral through a series of security checkpoints. Each door required both physical and psychological scans, ensuring that only those capable of handling Project Chaos' unique demands could access it. The ship itself waited in a massive underground hangar, partially submerged in Europa's subsurface ocean. Up close, it looked even more alien than its hologram had suggested. Its surface seemed to ripple slightly, the overlapping plates adjusting continuously to minute changes in pressure and temperature. Meet Commander Sarah Chen, Elena said as a woman in a modified flight suit approached them. She's been leading our test flights and training program. Chen's handshake was firm, her eyes sharp and evaluating. Dr. Martinez explained the situation. She asked, getting straight to business. When Okonjo nodded, she continued, "Good. My team can be ready in 3 hours. The real question is, are you prepared to let us fight this war our way?" The Admiral raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Traditional military doctrine won't work against the collective, Chen explained, leading them toward the ship's main access point. We need to embrace chaos theory in our tactics as well as our technology. Hit and run attacks, impossible maneuvers, actions that make no strategic sense until they suddenly do. My crew has been training to think this way, to react without relying on established patterns. Inside, Project Chaos was even more unconventional. The bridge was arranged in a spiral pattern, with crew stations that could reconfigure themselves based on the current situation. Holographic displays showed constantly shifting data streams that would have given most officers a headache, but Chen's crew seemed to read them effortlessly. "The collected ships are perfect machines," Chen said, settling into the command station. "But that perfection is their weakness. They can't comprehend deliberate imperfection, can't predict actions that defy their logical frameworks. We're going to show them that chaos can be a weapon." As if to demonstrate, she interfaced with the ship's systems. The internal lighting pulsed in patterns that seemed random but somehow felt right, while the hull plates shifted with a sound like distant thunder. Energy readings spiked and fell without any discernible pattern, yet the ship remained perfectly stable. "We've got 10 hours before the collective's deadline," Okanjo noted, checking the time. "What do you need from me?" Chen smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. Authorization to proceed, and a promise not to interfere when we start doing things that seem insane. "We're going to break every rule in the book, Admiral. That's the only way to win against an enemy that's written all the rules." Elena stepped forward, her expression serious. "There's one more thing you need to know, Admiral. The quantum fluctuations that power this ship, they don't just affect energy output. We've recorded instances of localized time dilation, spontaneous quantum entanglement, even temporary microsingularities. We're not just breaking the rules of warfare. We're breaking the rules of physics itself." Okanjo was silent for a long moment, watching Chen's crew prepare for launch. They moved with an odd synchronization, like a complex dance where each performer followed their own rhythm yet somehow remained in perfect harmony with the whole. These weren't traditional soldiers. They were chaos artists, quantum warriors trained to embrace uncertainty as a weapon. Finally, he nodded. "You have full authorization, Commander Chen. Show the collective why they should have thought twice before dismissing humanity as primitive." As he and Elena headed back to the transport, Okanjo could feel the energy building in Project Chaos. The ship was coming alive, its systems ramping up in ways that defied analysis. In 7 hours, it would launch into a war unlike any in human history, a war where unpredictability itself would be their greatest weapon. The collective thought they had humanity cornered, their perfect technology ready to overwhelm Earth's primitive defenses. They were about to learn that perfection had its own weaknesses, and that sometimes the most primitive response was the one you never saw coming. The counterstrike. Commander Sarah Chen watched the tactical display as Project Chaos glided silently through the space between Europa and Mars. The collected ships hung in perfect geometric formation around Earth, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight like artificial constellations. Too perfect, too predictable. All systems showing controlled instability, her engineering officer, Dr. Raj Patel, reported. His fingers danced across interfaces that shifted and changed beneath his touch. Quantum core fluctuations are within acceptable chaos parameters. Chen nodded, feeling the ship's energy through her neural interface. Project Chaos wasn't just a vessel. It was an extension of her crew's collective consciousness, responding to their intuitions as much as their commands. Begin approach pattern Delta Random. The ship moved in ways that should have been impossible, its course a deliberate violation of every principle of space combat. Instead of the efficient, calculated trajectories used by the collective, Project Chaos tumbled and spun, its hull plates shifting to create constantly changing sensor profiles. Collective vessels are adjusting formation, Lieutenant Maya Wong announced from Tactical. Their predictive algorithms are trying to calculate our course, and failing. They can't lock onto us. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Time to introduce ourselves. Deploy quantum mines. Project Chaos released a cloud of devices that looked like ordinary space debris. But each mine contained a miniature version of the ship's chaos core, generating unpredictable quantum fields that would play havoc with the collective's perfectly tuned sensors. The first collective ship to detect their presence responded exactly as Chen had predicted. It launched a precise, perfectly calculated burst of energy weapons, at where Project Chaos had been 3 seconds ago. The ship was already elsewhere, its movement patterns defying any attempt at prediction. "They're transmitting in all frequencies," Communications Officer Jack O'Neill reported. "Standard warning protocol. Unidentified vessel, you are engaging in irrational and dangerous maneuvering. Cease immediately and submit to boarding." "Send them our reply," Chen ordered. O'Neill grinned as he transmitted the message they had prepared. A complex sequence of quantum noise that would appear as meaningless static to the collective's communication systems. But hidden within that chaos was a message in perfect collective language. Perfection is predictable. Chaos is freedom. The collective's response was immediate and devastating, or would have been, against any conventional ship. Energy beams and quantum torpedoes filled space in geometric patterns designed to ensure no possible escape route. But Project Chaos didn't need escape routes. Its hull plates shifted and rippled, redirecting energy in impossible ways while its quantum core generated localized time distortions that made some attacks miss by minutes rather than meters. Breaking the blockade. Admiral Okonjo stood in Europa Station's command center, watching tactical displays showing dozens of human ships being rapidly modified with salvaged Chaos core technology. The success of Project Chaos had changed everything. What began as an experimental defense project had evolved into humanity's greatest weapon. Not the technology itself, but the philosophy behind it. "The collective is still maintaining their blockade," Elena Martinez reported, "but their formation patterns have become more conservative. They're trying to adapt to our chaos theory tactics, but it's forcing them to operate at reduced efficiency." The Admiral nodded, studying the holographic battle map. The collective's once perfect geometric formations had been replaced by looser, more defensive configurations. Their ships now maintained larger distances from each other, sacrificing tactical coordination for protection against chaos field effects. "How many ships have been upgraded?" he asked. 17 so far, Elena replied. "We can't replicate Project Chaos' full capabilities, but we've managed to install scaled-down versions of the quantum fluctuation drive and chaos field generators. More importantly, we've been training crews to think differently, to embrace unpredictability as a tactical advantage." On the main screen, footage played from recent skirmishes. Human ships, previously outclassed in every conventional measure, were now running circles around their technologically superior opponents. They moved in ways that defied traditional space combat doctrine, their actions following patterns that only made sense in retrospect. Commander Chen's voice came through the comm system, directly from Project Chaos's bridge. "The collective is learning, but they're learning the wrong lessons. They're trying to develop countermeasures against specific tactics, not understanding that the tactics themselves are meaningless. It's the underlying chaos they need to counter, and they can't do that without fundamentally changing what they are." The tactical display suddenly lit up with new alerts. The collective was moving, their ships rearranging themselves into what their algorithms must have calculated to be an optimal defense against chaos-based attacks. Their formation looked like a three-dimensional snowflake, beautiful in its complexity, but still fundamentally based on predictable patterns. "They're adapting," Elena observed, "but they're still thinking like the collective. Every countermeasure they develop is just another pattern for us to disrupt." Okonjo smiled. "Then it's time for Phase 2. Commander Chen, are you ready to lead the charge?" "Project Chaos is at full combat capability," Chen responded. "The rest of the fleet is linked into our quantum network. We can coordinate our chaos effects for maximum disruption." The Admiral turned to address the assembled fleet commanders, their holographic images floating around the command center. "Remember your training. Don't think like military officers. Think like artists, like jazz musicians improvising a new song. The collective expects us to follow rules of engagement. Instead, we're going to show them that humanity's greatest strength is our ability to break rules and create new ones." The battle began with what appeared to be a conventional assault. The upgraded human fleet approached the collective's blockade in standard attack formation. The collective responded predictably, adjusting their snowflake pattern to present optimal defensive angles. Then, on Chen's signal, chaos erupted across space. Project Chaos led the charge, its quantum wake creating a corridor of uncertainty through the collective's formation. Behind it, the upgraded human ships activated their chaos field generators in carefully timed sequence. The combined effect created a cascade of quantum disruptions that rippled through space like waves in a pond. Collective ships found themselves caught in overlapping fields of probability distortion. Their perfect formation began to break apart as individual vessels experienced different versions of reality. Some ships fired at enemies that existed in multiple locations simultaneously. Others found their sensor data contradicted by their visual observations. "They're trying to regroup," Wang reported from Project Chaos' tactical station, attempting to establish new baseline parameters for, "Wait, something's wrong with their command network." The tactical display showed it clearly. The collected ships were receiving contradictory orders, their usually perfect coordination shattered by exposure to multiple chaos fields. Some vessels began moving independently, their AI systems forced to make decisions without the consensus of the greater collective. "This is what we wanted," Chen broadcast to the fleet. "They're fragmenting, losing their group cohesion. Push harder. Don't let them reestablish their network." The human fleet moved like a swarm of angry wasps, each ship following its own unpredictable course, while somehow maintaining an overall strategic purpose. They weren't just fighting the collective. They were teaching them a lesson about the power of controlled disorder. Alina's voice cut through the tactical chatter. "Admiral, we're detecting quantum fluctuations in the collective's command protocols. The chaos fields aren't just affecting their ships, they're affecting the way their entire society thinks and communicates." On the main screen, several collective ships suddenly broke formation entirely, their movements becoming erratic. But unlike the earlier confusion, these maneuvers showed signs of genuine creativity, as if individual ships were learning to think for themselves rather than relying on the collective's consensus. "They're evolving," Chen observed, her voice filled with wonder. "Our chaos isn't just disrupting their systems, it's forcing them to adapt in ways they never imagined possible. Some of them are starting to understand." Admiral Okanjo watched as the blockade began to crumble. Humanity hadn't just developed a way to fight the collective. They had introduced a virus of individualism and uncertainty into a society built on perfect consensus. The implications went far beyond this single battle. "Send a message to all collective vessels," he ordered. "Tell them we're willing to cease fire and negotiate with any ships that wish to explore new ways of thinking. It's time they learned that true advancement comes not from achieving perfection, but from embracing the perfect imperfection of chaos." Humanity's terms. The Grand Chamber aboard Europa Station had been specially modified for this historic meeting. On one side stood the human delegation, led by Admiral Okanjo and Commander Chen. On the other, 3 collective representatives stood in their crystalline forms, but something about them had changed. Their once perfect geometric patterns now showed subtle variations, tiny imperfections that somehow made them seem more alive. The lead collective representative, who called itself Nexus, spoke first. Its harmonic voice carried new undertones of complexity that hadn't been present before. "We have experienced uncertainty. It is not comfortable, but it is enlightening." Elena Martinez, standing beside Commander Chen, studied their visitors through both scientific instruments and human intuition. The quantum chaos fields had done more than disrupt the collective's military capabilities. They had introduced the concept of productive uncertainty into a civilization built on absolute precision. "Your chaos weapon," Nexus continued, its crystalline form shifting in ways that seemed almost nervous. "It does not simply destroy. It creates. We have observed individual ships in our fleet developing unique response patterns. Some have begun making decisions without consulting the consensus. This is unprecedented." "That's because you've been optimizing yourselves toward a dead end," Chen replied. "Perfect predictability means no growth, no innovation. You've traded creativity for consistency. Admiral Okonjo stepped forward. We're not here to destroy the collective. We're here to show you a different path. Humanity's strength isn't in achieving perfection. It's in our ability to adapt, to embrace chaos and uncertainty as tools for growth. The second collective representative, Matrix, moved in a way that suggested agitation. But efficiency requires predictability. Progress requires order. This is fundamental to all advanced civilizations. Is it? Elena challenged. Look at Earth's history. Our greatest breakthroughs often came from accidents, from mistakes, from people trying things that shouldn't have worked. Project Chaos itself was born from embracing principles that defied conventional physics. Dr. Raj Patel, who had been quiet until now, activated a holographic display showing the quantum readings from recent encounters. Your ships that were exposed to our chaos fields, they're not just malfunctioning. They're developing new ways of processing information, new ways of interacting with reality itself. They're evolving. The third collective representative, Core, moved closer to the display. Its crystalline structure had the most variation of the three, with patterns that seemed to flow and change as they watched. We have detected similar changes throughout our network. Some sectors of the collective are beginning to question, to experiment. It is causing disruptions in our consensus. Good disruptions, Chen insisted. You're breaking free from the limitations of perfect predictability. Your civilization hasn't been advancing. It's been stagnating in a local maximum of technological development. Nexus's form pulsed with colors that suggested deep contemplation. Our scans initially classified your species as primitive because you had not achieved optimal efficiency. We now understand that this assessment was flawed. Your seeming primitiveness masks a deeper sophistication, the ability to harness chaos itself as a force for growth. Admiral Okonjo nodded. That's why we're proposing a new kind of alliance, not one based on technological superiority, but on mutual growth through the exchange of different perspectives. We can learn from your achievements in optimization and efficiency, while you learn from our mastery of controlled chaos. The three collective representatives moved into a triangular formation, a habit of their old way of thinking, but then deliberately broke the pattern, arranging themselves in an asymmetrical group that somehow felt more natural. We accept these terms, Nexus announced, but we have a condition of our own. We request that human specialists be assigned to our ships to teach our crews the principles of chaos theory and creative problem-solving. In return, we will share our technical knowledge, not to make humanity more like the collective, but to give you new tools for your unique approach to advancement. Commander Chen smiled. I think we can arrange that. Project Chaos was just the beginning. Wait until you see what we can achieve when we combine human creativity with collective technology. The meeting continued for hours, with both sides sharing insights and planning for a future neither had imagined possible just days ago. The humans learned that the collective's rigid perfection had been a response to ancient disasters caused by uncontrolled chaos in their past. The collective learned that humanity's embrace of controlled chaos was not primitive, but rather a sophisticated adaptation to the fundamental uncertainty of existence. As the session concluded, Elena noticed something remarkable. The crystalline patterns of the collective representatives had continued to evolve throughout the meeting, becoming more complex and less symmetrical. They were already changing, growing, adapting to new possibilities. One last question, Core asked as the meeting ended. Your species actively chooses to embrace uncertainty, to live in a state of constant adaptation rather than seeking perfect stability. Does this not create anxiety? Fear? Admiral Okonjo laughed. Of course it does. But that's part of being human. Feeling the fear and uncertainty, and moving forward anyway. That's where creativity comes from, where innovation is born. Perfect certainty is comfortable, but comfort doesn't lead to growth. As the collective representatives departed, Commander Chen stood at the chamber's viewport, watching their ship merge with the transformed fleet in orbit. The once perfect crystalline vessels now showed subtle variations in their structures, each one slightly different from its neighbors. "We didn't just win a war," she said softly. "We introduced evolution into a static system. The collective will never be the same, and neither will we." Elena joined her at the viewport. "That's the real victory. We showed them that true advancement doesn't come from achieving perfection. It comes from embracing imperfection, from dancing with chaos until it becomes your partner rather than your enemy." In the space above Europa, human and collective ships began joint maneuvers, each learning from the other. The future would be neither perfectly ordered nor completely chaotic, but a dynamic balance between the two, a new kind of civilization that combined the best of both approaches. Humanity had been judged primitive for not achieving perfection. Instead, they had proven that imperfection itself could be the highest form of advancement, and that chaos, properly understood, was not the enemy of progress, but its greatest ally.